Episode 7, Breaking the Cycle of Abuse. Welcome to Episode 7 of Rising Up and Finding the Power Within. In this episode, the host will tackle a pivotal and transformative topic, breaking the cycle of abuse. Understanding the cyclical nature of abusive relationships is essential for anyone seeking to reclaim their power and find freedom from harmful dynamics. Throughout this episode, listeners will be guided through the stages of the abuse cycle, from tension building to reconciliation and calm. The discussion will highlight how programming can trap individuals in these repetitive patterns, making it challenging to recognize the need for change. The host will share valuable insights and strategies for breaking free from these cycles, including setting firm boundaries, creating a safety plan, and seeking support from trusted friends or professionals. By acknowledging the power of programming and understanding the dynamics at play, individuals will be empowered to take proactive steps to disrupt the cycle and reclaim their lives. Join the host as they explore the journey of breaking the cycle of abuse and embracing the strength within each listener to rise up and thrive. It's time to dive in.
Welcome back. This is Season 1, Episode 7 of Rising Up and Finding the Power Within. My name is Nancy Pusateri, and thank you so much for joining me. I am so glad you are joining me today as I tackle the pivotal and transformative topic of breaking the cycle of abuse. In this episode, it's crucial for anyone who has experienced abuse or is currently navigating the complexities of an abusive relationship to understand what breaking the cycle means. I directed my book, Rising Up, directly towards breaking the cycle. I tried several different times on trying to get help from my parents, which failed. And the end result had to be exactly what I wasn't planning on doing, but it needed to happen in order to break that cycle. Otherwise, more individuals would have been abused if I wouldn't have acted. Understanding the cycle and its nature and how it can affect you is essential for reclaiming your power and finding freedom from harmful dynamics. Many individuals find themselves caught in this repetitive pattern of tension, abuse, reconciling, and then they're calm. Today, I will explore these cycles, how programming can trap individuals, and most importantly, how to break free. So first, I want to go over on understanding the cycle of abuse, discussing the cycle of abuse itself. There's a period where tension starts building. It's a phase. These are different phases that victims will go through. In the tension building phase, the relationship becomes increasingly strained. The abuser may display escalating anger or frustration, irritability. They'll create an environment surrounded by fear and anxiety for you. And the victim may feel like they're walking on eggshells, constantly trying to appease their partner to avoid conflict. This is a programming stage. They are programming you to put yourself aside, put any logic aside, and focus on all of what they want, all their intentions, whether it's good or bad. You're starting that isolation process of isolating yourself from the world and isolating yourself from yourself, if you understand what I mean. So you might notice that small disagreements will lead to like these negative reactions from your abuser, and you find yourself increasingly anxious and wondering, how do I navigate these interactions to make them end in a positive manner? Well, it most likely will not happen, because that's exactly what they're trying to program into you. They want you to have this anxiety. They want you to have this fear. They want you to feel like you have to walk on eggshells, because their actions are so unpredictable and you never know what'll spark up a reaction, that you put all of yourself aside and you just center in to appeasing that abuser. And it's just a very odd thing because I don't expect that from people. So if I have a small disagreement with somebody, I'm not going to sit there and turn it around and make it about me, but they do. They enjoy doing that. They idolize themselves because they have such a low self-esteem. And you doing this for them and being in this tension building phase gives them some sort of power. So they enjoy having you wondering all the time, are they happy? Is there anything you can do for them? So they definitely thrive on that. And then the incident of abuse is the next phase. This is the phase where the actual abusive behavior occurs. So your tension building phase, you're trying to prevent it, but of course, they're not going to let that settle. They're going to go to the next step, and that's the step you were trying to prevent. So it could be physical violence, emotional manipulation, verbal attacks, and this is an impact on you, and it takes this incident to a whole different level. It can leave the victim feeling scared now, confused, ashamed. So you got all these emotions going on where you're scared to begin with and have anxiety, and then the act takes place. The verbal put downs, the physical interaction, maybe they shove you, hit you, beat you, whatever it is, but that creates more of those emotions to flow in, and you don't know how to handle it because you already had tried to please them, and you're just feeling like a consistent failure, especially when the outrage action takes place. Now, I saw something really, really interesting today about fear, and I really want to share it with you folks. And I wrote it down in my journal this morning. And fear is a stem of our ego, which is trying to protect us. And the fear breakdown for each letter, FEAR, false evidence appearing real. And if you sit there and think about that, false evidence appearing real, we are living in this false evidence persona, and we are making it appear as it's really going to happen. And a lot of times we just don't understand why the abuser blew up. And a lot of it it really has nothing to do with you. It's really their own personal issues. But an argument can escalate into yelling and then a manipulation, and it leaves the victim feeling defeated and helpless. So now you have this cycle that's added more to it. And you're no longer just walking on eggshells trying to people please. Now you are seeing the result of your failure of that first phase. After the abusive incident, the abuser often expresses remorse and apologizing, making promises to change. These are all lies. These are just to pull you back in and to cause you to be their punching bag again. And they know that you care for them. They know they take every good value that the victim has to pull them back in. They'll create this false sense of hope for the victim. They'll start leading them into believing that things will improve. For example, the abuser might shower the victim with affection and say they seek help. They'll seek help, or insist it will never happen again, making the victim feel guilty for even considering leaving or standing up for themselves. They'll always make themselves as the center point. And then it goes into this calm phase. And I remember thinking this is the calm before the storm, because I always knew when it was calm, that was when I least trusted what was happening in my home. And this phase is a period of relative peace and normalcy. And this calmness can often be accompanied by unaddressed issues that linger beneath the surface, because they'll never go back to resolve the issue itself, the topic, or whatever got them to explode, or whatever got them into this bad mood and started to put it all on you. They'll try to push it under the rug and move forward. Narcissists do not want to talk about their bad behavior. They never want to admit to it. They just are like, get over it. It was, it was a mistake, or you're taking it too wrong, or you're going too far with it. Whatever the case may be, they put it right back on you because they can't own their actions. And this is all due to their low self-esteem. They have such a low self-esteem that they need to have this power and control and make you feel bad to make them feel good. If you don't understand this behavior, that's good, because that is partially why victims stay, because they don't understand. They think it's fixable. They think that if the right therapeutic measures take place, that this can be fixed. We cannot fix them, and nor can we be there and be their punching bag. So you do need to understand that when this calm phase is going on, don't forget what they just did to you. Don't forget the words they just said to you, because they have a lot to own up to, and they have a lot to say. That, for instance, what I did was wrong, and what I should have done was this. Now, people make mistakes. It doesn't mean, if you see these behaviors going on in a relationship, that the individual is a narcissist. If you want the relationship to work, and the individual who goes through these little phases may have been brought up by a narcissist, a lot of times if you sit down during this calm phase and you try to discuss what just exploded and what just happened, there are people out there that have a moral compass, and they feel so bad, and then they try to focus on changing those behaviors, because they were programmed by their abusers. But now let's talk about a narcissist that will not change and not face the mistakes they're making. Those are the hopeless cases for you. You're not going to be able to change them. The only way they can change is by admitting and going and seeking help and actually applying change. So if that incident happens again, they have to change the way they handled it from the previous time. So they can't put it on anyone else. They have to take responsibility. They have to problem solve and try to make peace with whatever their challenge is. If that abuser continues their way, they'll continue putting that on the victim, then blowing up at the victim, and then showering them with gifts and apologizing. If that cycle continues over and over and over again, there's a lot of chance of them not improving while in that relationship with you, because you're pretty much an enabler at this point, because you keep forgiving and going back. And they're going to be like, that's more powerful for them, because they know they can do this act and get away with it. So during this phase of calm, victims may feel like relieved and like, okay, things are going to get better now. And a lot of that is like lies, because deep down inside, we know, because we saw that ugly in them and we heard those words and saw those actions, but we're trying to survive. We're trying to make this relationship work. And if you're a child, you want a relationship with your parents. You want to have that positive reinforcement, and you think, well, mom and dad are going through a bad, time right now, and I'm just going to have to put up with their bad mood. Or your spouse is doing the same thing and you're feeling like they're overwhelmed with life and taking care of you and the family, and you're thinking, well, how can I alleviate this? But now that it's calm, maybe we have hope. And you have this hope, and it's a false hope, because you already know that the initial blow up was never resolved. And because it was never resolved, you kind of have it lingering in the back of your mind. You're not going to let it go, because you know that deep down inside, they don't have good intentions for you, because they're not really owning up to the real problem. And there's such an impact on how you're being programmed with this, because they want you under their wing so they can continue with these behaviors because of their low self-esteem and low self-worth. They're extremely weak individuals. If you ever saw a narcissist up against a strong person in the same dynamic, they crumble. They can't. They get angry. They'll start lashing out. They'll start accusing that you're making them feel a certain way. They cannot take it. And that's how you know that they're not willing or able, possibly, to look at themselves for the damage they've created. So the impact of this programming affects the victim, and it gives way for the abuser to continue that cycle. They'll even be patient enough and let some time pass before flaring up at you again, because they want to convince you and build you up that in a positive way, thinking that it's going to be better now because that was the last blow up, which in fact it wasn't. Sometimes they'll blow up consistently throughout the week or month, and sometimes you won't see it for 6 months. I saw it with my dad. I thought, wow, maybe it's over, maybe it's done. Well, those were false beliefs that he was letting me think, because he was showering me with love and kindness, and the house was calm. My mother was even okay. It was just like little weird things. And I realized, as the cycle grew and got bigger as I got older, and I started to stand up for myself, that the frequency occurred. It started happening more and more and more, because I was not believing them. And I was letting them know, I don't believe you. Let's go get help. Let's go do this. Let's go do that. And those actions were never taken. They wanted me to trust them when they broke my trust a million times already. So I refused to trust them, because I remember I think I said in my one episode, my mother would say things to me sometimes, and I would look at her thinking, you are completely lying to me. That's what I would be thinking. But I would never tell her, because I already knew she was going to go to another level, or she was going to try and do something else, or she was going to try and put it back on me. And I already knew she couldn't handle the truth, because if she could handle the truth, then she wouldn't be acting this way. She would have been love, kind, a motherly figure to me, but she didn't want to be, because she didn't have the ego filled in her, and she let that run her, that she put it out on her child. Again, weak individuals. Now, with this impact of programming, the programming in this perpetuating cycle. It refers to this internalization of harmful messages, beliefs that the victim absorbs from their abuser in their environment. So victims start to self-doubt. They may question their perceptions of reality, thinking maybe I am overreacting. And I remember thinking that I may have been too sensitive, or I wasn't giving them the benefit of having a bad day or not being able to make their bills, or their image, their self-image with the family wasn't good. So I remember that I would make a lot of excuses. And sometimes you think, oh, I must have done something to deserve this. And I remember thinking, what did I do to deserve this? So that self-doubt is very, very strong. And also the fear of change, the idea of leaving or going to a new home or starting a new life was terrifying. It can lead to a fear of the unknown and a sense of dependency on the abuser. That you kind of give them more power than they deserve. And it's understandable when you don't know any better at the beginning stages, but as you grow in this relationship, you start to identify their behaviors and also how it's making you feel. And I just remember getting more angry the more I saw those cycles repeating. And it didn't matter what it was. It could have been in public. It was becoming so much more known. They become too confident that the world will not stop them and that they're unstoppable. So it can really tear a victim down, and those emotional highs and hoping that you can reconcile, and then you get into those abusive incidents and it brings you down, and it's leading victims to believe that the good moments outweigh the bad. And you want to go ahead and you want to look at the good times, and then you want to go ahead and try to make sense of their behavior and maybe what did you do to create that. It's very difficult. It's very difficult. Number one, it's not your job to fix them. Number two, they have no right to treat you that way. Number three, victims are stronger than they think. Number four, get out. Get out. Get away, set boundaries, rebuild yourself. You don't deserve that behavior to be in your life. So in this next part, I would like to talk about recognizing when to break the cycle. Recognizing when to break that cycle is very, very important. It's an important step in reclaiming your power. Physical violence, if there is any form of physical abuse, it is a priority to take care of yourself. And you need to be safe. If you have emotional manipulation, you feeling belittled or controlled, it's affecting you mentally, your mental health, and it's seriously time to consider leaving. And if you're living in fear, constant fear, your partner's reactions are all you care about, that's a red flag, folks. That's a red flag, because you shouldn't be living in a home where you're afraid. And if you notice that you're constantly altering your behavior to avoid conflict or feeling anxious about your partner's mood, it's important to take that step and assess your situation, because it may be time to go. It may be time for you to act. It may be time for you to tell somebody. It may be time for you to call a helpline and say, this is my situation. I need advice. And it's always good to check on what others are saying with what you're going through, because it will help validate what you're feeling. And I remember getting that, and I remember thinking, wow, so this is really bad. I didn't realize how bad it was because I was so used to it and I thought it was normal. So it's very important to take a step forward and assess your situation. Breaking the cycle of abuse is not easy, but it is possible. Don't make it think like it's impossible and I have children and I depend on this individual for finances. I would rather be poor, homeless, and living out of my car than living with them. I don't need that house. I don't need that luxury. I don't need their support, because then it's almost like you're selling yourself to the devil and you're living with the devil, and they just want to tear you apart, and they don't care. They don't care about you. All they care about is themselves. So then when you do leave, you have to establish healthy boundaries. Start by setting clear boundaries with yourself first, because you need to say what is acceptable and what's not, and then setting boundaries with the individual. I used to set silent boundaries. It was, I refused to respond to some of the communication behaviors that I was receiving that were unacceptable. So when I started backing off on my reaction and started just being there with a blank face and just letting them say their thing and not stopping that, I would just sit there and think, you're showing me your true colors. You haven't asked me about me. You haven't asked if, I feel how I feel. You haven't put any energy into knowing me a little better. It's all about them. And then I needed to create some sort of safety plan. If something were to happen, where would I go? What would I do? I spontaneously ran away a couple times. I was trying to get help from sources that were not going to help me because they didn't know how. And also back in the 80s, those belief systems were different than they are today. So communicating what behaviors are unacceptable to yourself and to them if you can, because you don't want to flare it, but you do want to create these boundaries. And then you want to create a safety plan, because if something happens, because most likely something will, because they are never going to let you down. They're going to react and do exactly what you don't want them to do, because that's how we enable them. And then you got to look for people to help you. You got to go to your friends, your family, and call a hotline, find out all of the sources and everything that's available to you, and start talking to someone. Your mind is not good at this point. It is going every which way, and it is so exhausting. You are literally falling to the ground almost on a daily basis of how difficult this process is. But I can reassure you, there is an end and there is a better life waiting for you. But we need to get out of what we were in, if you understand that. A lot of times we choose to be with someone who's abusive, or we're born into it. And we have to look at the real thing. Are they good people? Are they going to use me for good intentions? Am I able to trust them? Am I able to express vulnerability with them without it being thrown at me as a negative and them using my weaknesses as their strengths? So when you look at these things, you have to understand that you deserve better. And how you start to heal is on focusing on your self-care. Really start journaling and writing down all your options, and start writing down your dreams. If you can't write and you don't have time, speak out loud. I used to talk to God all the time. And I just felt like sometimes things just kept getting worse and worse. But sometimes I realized they had to get that bad in order for that demon to go away, for me to be rescued and go on to the other side of peace, hope, love. So that was very important to me, that I find this on the other side. I believed somewhere in my heart that it existed. I would take walks in nature. I would pray so hard in the middle of the metro parks. And I remember just standing there crying. But the thing is, after I went through something like that and went back to my car to leave, I felt not only better, I felt more empowered. I felt that I could speak my truth out in the open. And that I had to look at and say, Nancy, I'm proud of you. Nancy, you can do this. Nancy, you are strong. You are confident. And as long as it's driven by love, you will be okay. And I had to understand what this abuse was. Where was this coming from? What seed was put in my abuser's heart to grow from this? And how can I turn this around and have compassion on them, but release myself from their life, because they needed to figure it out. I was no longer going to be there for their, because I was actually holding them back. I was letting them be bad because I stayed in the relationship or wanted to have a relationship. So it was best for me to go away and let them figure it out, because now I got to heal. Now I got to educate. Now I got to rebuild and create my own family that I can trust and is filled with love, care, and respect. And you deserve that. So reaching out to local support groups, hotlines can give you advice. Finding trusted individuals in your life that you can open up to. It's very, very important to break the cycle of abuse. It takes a lot of courage, but it is a transformative journey that you don't want to miss. You have to have awareness, commitment, and a willingness to reclaim your power. And you deserve a life filled with safety, respect, and love. I appreciate you joining me today on this breaking the cycle of abuse. And this is, again, episode 7. Thank you for joining me. And as we explore the essential topic, if you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, share it, make a comment below. Together we can create a community of support and healing. And don't forget, it's your time to rise up, because you have the power within. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to episode 7 of Rising Up and Finding the Power Within. Today, we explored the critical topic of breaking the cycle of abuse and the profound journey it entails. We discussed the cyclical nature of abusive relationships, how programming can trap individuals in this pattern, and practical strategies for reclaiming your power and moving forward. Remember, breaking free from the cycle of abuse takes courage and commitment. You deserve to live a life filled with safety, respect, and love. By recognizing the signs of abuse, setting firm boundaries, and seeking support, you can take the crucial steps necessary to create a brighter future. As we conclude this episode, I want to remind you that you are not alone on this journey. There is a supportive community out there, ready to empower you as you rise up and find the strength within. If you found today's discussion helpful, please subscribe and share this episode with others who might benefit from it. Thank you for joining me, Nancy Pusateri, on this transformative journey. Together, let's continue to rise up, support one another, and embrace the power within us to heal and thrive. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.